Okay, so in lieu of Podolia, I'm taking a corps, or two corps, a supply wagon, and Constantine. Really not sure Constantine's the person they would send, but out of all the leaders available, he is the one who provides the least. So I didn't allow him to pawn off militia on me. It probably doesn't make much difference either way, but that feels highly unlikely it would be allowable. I think Cossacks would also be, and damaged corps. Damaged core may actually be refuted from there, but so yeah, we got some additional Russians there, and I guess we're ready to rock. You know, I mean, we're 2.5 years left of the game, which, you know, is a painful amount, but it's what we are. Coalition naval move. I guess the Russians move at the same time because they're still at war with Turkey. And we rectified some situations. I probably should have thrown another chit in there, although there wasn't really anything anybody could do. Shipped some forces over into here to reinforce with. All right, so some little excitement here. The Empire got a land 4, and I didn't want to move anything. But then I got a winter quarters, which starts putting pressure on things because another winter quarters, the turn is over. And then the coalition got a land 4. Well, I moved my Russians down in the supply wagon. I often forget to drop them off because they only have movement of 4. Everything else is kind of 6 minimum. Feels stupid to me. It really does. But, you know, I detach a leader, and now I have an army with less leaders. I don't think I can just pull one out of nowhere. And Charles went forward and took Cologne, driving Reed away. Now, because the English have no allies anymore, and because the English and Austrians aren't part of the same bloc, they can't operate together, and they really would like to have a double army to come down here or whatever. Same thing with the English and Spaniards. However, getting a favorable peace is easier. So it's more valuable if you can do it without an ally, with the way I'm playing things, but whatever. So Wellington went and took Amsterdamster and drove the French fleet out, but even though the British fleet that had collected there is more powerful, they got driven back. And I guess we're on to another chit, but I kind of want to break. You know, I did a couple of kind of things. You know, the turn could be over. The year could be over real soon. And I come back up and draw the second winter quarters. That's the end of the turn. Bang, bang, nothing happened. Just, you know, to get personal shit or whatever. It is Thursday, I believe. I'm thinking about heading down to the hardware store if I can stay awake long enough. This isn't great because if I'm up all day or whatever, or sleep during the late part of the day, it's kind of a bad situation for dancing, but I feel awake. I made myself coffee for some reason. All right, I don't think we have any attrition. There aren't going to be any surrenders because that's just the nature of things in this game, you know. The winter turn, it might be my only activation. I got a Empire 3 that allows me to move just about everything. I moved Napoleon and some forces down here. Yeah, this is not really safe, but I'm trying to get away from Wellington as well. Napoleon wants to stop the Spaniards, turn around and come back to face potentially larger forces like Charles and Wellington, who might actually, they didn't yet, but they might align up into a coalition. Meanwhile, all these French forces coming back, you know, I think I wasn't in supply to force Russia to surrender. I seem to have been missing a link here. I certainly could have set it up. I'm ignoring it. Meanwhile, the Turks, they move their army up here because if the Russians want to hit them, that's fine. I'll be able to rebuild forces. Right now, I don't have a huge amount of Turks to rebuild. I have a fair amount. On the other hand, I don't really know how strong the Russians are. I know that they took some losses, but yeah, it turns out they probably want to fight as well. Meanwhile, I'm laying siege here and just trying to grab shit wherever I can, as it were. But yeah, and I have no real hope. The Russians are going to beat up the Turks. They're bigger, they're stronger. There's just nothing can be done about it. Anyway, we're going to stop there because that was a lot of pieces to move. The English managed to sail in and hit that Holland fleet. They took a couple of cracks at it. Didn't they? There were 2 rounds of battle, I think is all there was. It was an even battle, but they managed to beat it. Followed it into its retreat, and then moved other fleets in place into the channel and blockaded as much as we could, as heavily as we could. I could easily have sent one of these. I don't want the channel open. Just because it'd be ugly, but I can send another escort. I've got more than one. Like, I could take my chances, but I'm not really defending the channel very carefully. And with the French falling back onto France, there's some threat again. So I guess this is wise. And France's big good luck may have given out. The coalition got their 1 marker, which let them move just about everything. Now, in some cases, I wanted to reinforce things. So, for example, the Russian army did not advance against the Turks. I've got a pretty good chance of getting another operation, and I wanted to bring some detachments into play. Some could be reinforcements, some are just cheating. However, in France itself, we see a lot of problems happening. Metz fell. French went up, took Lyon, or the Brits came up, took Lyon. The Spaniards reinforced this so that they can move forward out of there, again, similar to the Russians that wanted additional troops if I'm going to be anywhere near Napoleon, basically. But the Austrians also took Brussels, which doesn't actually matter, but because Flanders is part of France officially. The English took Antwerp, which does matter. The Austrians took Liège, which actually does matter. So they're each having their own supply routes through there. Find it kind of funny. Well, they're not allied, so there you have it. And by taking Antwerp, we forced the French fleet out of here. They didn't manage to beat the coalition fleet, and so some good French ships were sunk. The French are really falling behind the 8 ball in terms of navies. Here's the problem. If anybody allied, so if nobody allies, things are kind of in a state of uncertainty. But if everybody is allied, let's just say they do this in the spring, and France surrenders, they will still have more victory points by far than anyone else. Holding locations is worth more victory points. So France not surrendering is actually worth victory points. What happens if France surrenders to multiple people who aren't allied? Like I said, that's undefined, right? I don't know if they can be stripped of more territory because of that kind of situation. It feels a little like, it feels wrong in either direction. It feels like someone should be able to say, yeah, I'm not accepting a surrender unless I can get territory, you know, if they're strong and doing well. But somebody like Spain probably can't stand up to France. So it kind of makes sense that, and there's nothing that allows you to diminish France's strength points. So now the game starts getting into some stupid jockeying position where we're trying to keep the war alive until 1814, or what? I mean, I don't know. The game just gets stupid, right? Now, if holding territory were the primary way to get victory points in Empires in Arms, maybe that would make sense too, and it might make, but it's not. You only get victory points for territory you legitimately own, i.e. have won over a peace. There's important stuff that's going to fall, like Bavaria, I believe, is going to fall, but it's only going to half fall because Berg is going to, I think, get released, if Berg is the Bavarian thing. I don't remember what Bavaria owns. Like, somebody owns the Palatinate. The Palatinate is Baden's. So yeah, Berg has been owned by Bavaria, which means that I think Bavaria itself is going to surrender, but Berg is going to remain as a minor or something. I have to look through those rules for that. But something is going to happen there where they surrender. Saxony is going to surrender. But most of these other territories are inherent to France, which means they're not going to surrender. There's some chance of a second coalition, of another coalition war coming in. But I really feel like we're in a position where it's really unlikely France will lose. They've got the mandatory peace situation, and there's something fuzzy about that, where like, maybe you can attack people within the mandatory peace, this rights of the people. Yeah, the rights of the people thing, which allows you to hit somebody again, but the mandatory peace is still in effect. So it's going to be at least 6 turns, which I think, I just don't know. I feel like the alliance is necessary to force the peace, and then maybe we'll have enough turns that the game will be over. But that the coalition will have another chance to hit the French. But yeah, it just does not look pleasant to me. It looks like a France who hasn't been defeated heavily. Like, one of the things is, it's really hard to take the miners away because they just get incorporated into France. Now, if they're put into, like, you know, the Rhine Confederation or the Italian states or whatever, you'd have more of an opportunity. But yeah, it's really painful to strip things away. I think my best move is to try to defeat France and hope that we get a low number of turns on the mandatory peace. Russia's already kind of out of it. I don't think they can get enough from Turkey, you know. I mean, maybe if they don't force Turkey to surrender, they can occupy enough territories. But the key is, most territories aren't worth much. It's only the things with stars, and those are kind of not that obvious and hard to see. So it's like targeting them and everything is hard enough as it is. I just don't like this game in so many ways. I'm coming close. I'm coming close to like after, if France surrenders, there's a good chance it might just be over at that point with a French victory, because I mean, I figured the victory points, and France just has so fucking many that it's really hard to take them out. Of course, there's 3 for Paris itself. That's something, but you can't have France surrendered to get those. Because as soon as France surrenders, that's kind of why you're in Paris, right? I don't know. It's just, it's so fucked up. I mean, I can maybe do some convoluted type of stuff, which, you know, is annoying in a game like Churchill, where there's a lot of convoluted stuff to try to get the victory. But that becomes most of the game, and it's not like, you know, it's not like you're busy doing all this mechanical shit at the same time as you're trying. And it still doesn't feel right. And here, it's just obnoxious. Most of my day, I mean, whatever. You know, I sat out on the my time that I can do things during daylight. Sat out on the porch, drank myself a couple of magic milkshakes, and had a cigar, and then went to sleep, because even if I drink just one beer, I just kind of want to snooze afterwards. Helps me into my escape. Came back up here, pulled a coalition land, can't use, a neutral land. Cool. The Prussians moved forward, and then the winter quarters, and we're done. So this is the end of 1812. We've got a lot of surrenders because it's a winter turn. I don't know how many. And I got to do some thinking and flipping through the books to get that. So I'll be back. Less than I thought, actually. Saxony surrenders to the Austrians. It becomes a minor. Got their troops over there. And I think the only other thing that falls, not sure, because the status just isn't represented on the map. It has to be accounted for everywhere. Bavaria is half conquered. Yeah, Bavaria is half conquered. Now, the interesting thing here is this is one of the few that has this. Berg is now neutral, and Austria is conquering Bavaria. I can add it to my own territory, but I don't have a lot of Austrian troops. I don't see much reason not to institute Bavaria as an Austrian ally. But Berg is the old Bavarian leaders. However, they're not fighting on. They surrender and become a neutral. So now there's actually an opportunity to use the diplomacy card or whatever when we come to the next spring. There's the Talleyrand one or whatever. I think that's it. Baden, I thought, was going to be suffering the same kind of case, but Baden has actually been conquered by France. That's what this was there for. Cleves, I think, is in France's hands, although that wouldn't have been taken. Thuringia, I don't know where the fuck it is. You know, basically I have to look on the map, I have to look here, and I have to look there. And like when I'm trying to find out who owns what, I have to scan down the 1805 column to see, hey, what is it that Bavaria owned? What is it that Baden owned? Well, Baden owned Palatinate, and France absorbed both of them. Reed goes over with Bavaria as a new minor. It's not entirely unreasonable, unlike, say, the idea of the Prince of Orange, like, becoming a French ally for the Batavian Republic, but, you know. And yeah, I think we're done with the turn. We're not going to see a surrender now. Prussia comes in on this next year, I think in August or autumn. No, summer. And I tried to rewrite that as a 13. So Prussia will be available here. It was actually a remarkably, like, non-battle-filled year. Yeah, there were a couple, but the invasion of Russia was delayed without a lot of really key fights. The conquest of the French territory was pretty much bloodless. The conquest of Germany, again, pretty much bloodless. There is one big danger here. These Poles here, they're not far from Vienna. Souchez is not far from Prague. The Austrian army is on its heels in terms of trying to do anything to defend. It's too deep forward. Now I can send Schwarzenberg's Bohemian army back to try to interfere, but that may not be enough, right? So Austria is in a dangerous position. Obviously, Turkey kind of got off the hook because of the chit pulls. But yeah, I do believe we're entering 1813 now. Oh, the Russians ended their war in the east with the Turks, although they're still at war with Turkey. Bolivar is not out of the picture yet. He's a hard one to fight. I don't know how big a deal that is. That's not a lot of troops that are committed down there. And, well, we're 1 year closer to ending this.